So the experts in Vegas expect Sam Hartman's numbers to take a dip as the starting quarterback at Notre Dame compared to what he was putting up at Wake Forest. But why? Is it a trap? That's next.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, and welcome into Locked On Irish. Today is Thursday, August 10th, and thanks as always for making this your first listen of the day. You can watch a full episode on YouTube or listen on your preferred podcast platform, but no matter how you're tuning in today, please subscribe to the show. I'm Tyler Wojciak, and I'm the host. I graduated from Notre Dame in 2018, and I've covered college football as a producer ever since, first for ESPN and now at Fox Sports, which is where I've worked since the fall of 2021. I've also been podcasting about the Irish since 2020, and that is why I'm here with you now. Today's episode is brought to you by Birddogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnCollege or enter promo code LockedOnCollege for a free white tech hat with any purchase. If you're watching on YouTube right now, you can see I'm wearing my white tech hat as we speak. This could be yours. So get to birddogs.com, use promo code LockedOnCollege, and you'll get one of these with your order. We're going to do something a little different on the podcast today. In just a minute here, I'm going to be joined by Tim Murray, the host of VSiN's primetime radio show and their college football betting podcast, to talk about the best bets for Notre Dame's upcoming season. Not only is Tim a gambling expert, he's also a lifelong Notre Dame fan, so I think he is the perfect guest to come on the show and get us ready to gamble on this upcoming season. But if betting isn't your thing, that's totally fine. You'll still get plenty of interesting season preview content about key players in Notre Dame's biggest games this season, just from a slightly different perspective than normal. But here's an important note, so pay attention, okay? This is part one of a two-part episode. Tim and I went way longer than I anticipated, so I decided to break it up into two parts. We like to keep our shows under 30 minutes here at the Locked On Podcast Network, but Tim and I ended up talking for like an hour about a whole bunch of different stuff. We talked about the reasons for optimism about this team, causes for concern. We picked some over-unders, and then we went over all of Notre Dame's marquee matchups and broke down the early lines that are out there right now. So here's how it's broken down. Part one, this episode is going to be player-focused. We're going to pick some over-unders on player props pertaining to Sam Hartman, Audric Estime, Jordan Botelho, and Benjamin Morrison. Then in part two, which is already available on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, you can pull it up as soon as you're done with this episode. Tim and I break down the games against Ohio State, USC, and Clemson. Plus, we talk a bit about NC State, Louisville, Duke, and even the season opener against Navy as well. So once you're done with part one, head on over to part two, and you'll get a comprehensive breakdown of the season ahead. All right, here is part one with Tim Murray. All right, I'm here with Tim Murray from VSiN, and I'm really excited about this. We're going to pick some over-unders, and we're going to discuss the early lines for Notre Dame's marquee matchups. But, Tim, before we dive into all the numbers, how would you describe your level of optimism about the Irish heading into the season?
Tempered enthusiasm. I go back and forth, Tyler, because I am over the moon about Sam Hartman. I remember texting with some folks trying to figure out, who was Notre Dame interested in and who could they be going after in the transfer portal. And, there were a bunch of different names that were thrown out there that I won't bring up. I'm sure Notre Dame fans, heard them. But, when it was ultimately Sam Hartman, I was like, wow, I didn't even think this was a realistic possibility. I mean, honestly, the guy that I was hopeful for, which was a pipe dream, was Jake Haener, because I just love that dude. But ultimately, he was a fourth-round pick by the Saints and made the right decision to go pro. But I didn't think this was going to be a realistic possibility. I thought, he was going to go on to the NFL and, be an undrafted free agent or 6th or 7th round, whatever it is. So the excitement started there. The loss of Tommy Rees certainly brought it down a little bit, unlike probably some of your listeners, Tyler. I was a very big Tommy Rees guy.
So am I, man. It's
big believer.
This is
Tommy.
a safe space.
Yeah, I just, Nick Saban doesn't go out and get chumps. I'll just point out that. So when they lost him and then the offensive coordinator fiasco kind of unfolded the way that it did, but I'll be honest, and, I get it. We're in training camp, and the majority of stuff that comes out of camp is positive, but I've kind of been rejuvenated a little bit here, reading some reports out of camp. I certainly have my skepticisms about the defensive line and then the safety position. And, I would love to hear about the wide receivers kind of, whoa, they're emerging and, exciting there. So there's some, certainly some questions there, but all in all, I'm excited about this year. And, even though I am a fanatical Notre Dame fan, Tyler, I was born in 87. So I don't remember 88. I have brief memories of 93 and, the win over Florida State and the loss to Boston College. And then after that, really it was certainly a roller coaster ride. '05 was one of the more exciting years. And that was my freshman year of college. I had just a blast watching that season. But, the Kelly era was incredible. And I know there was no national championship, which led it to frustration. But, for me, I 10 wins every year, man, was like, all right, this is pretty cool. I'm enjoying it. So, that's what I would like to get to. And, I think, 10 wins this year would be phenomenal. And, I think Marcus Freeman, all in all, as I've gone incredibly long here, I think Marcus Freeman, he's got a lot of questions, but I also do think he's drawn the short end of the stick in, schedules, because BK did get the benefit of some schedules that looked more daunting than they ultimately ended up being. And when you look at 3 preseason top 10 teams and then some kind of tricky landmines out there, if this team got to 9 wins or, 9 wins, sweeping the board and losing to the big 3 or beating one of the big 3 and then, getting knocked off by Louisville or something like that, I think 9 wins is right about, where it should be. And, as we'll get to, that's kind of why the win total is in that 8.5, 9 range.
Look, I'm laughing because I agree with you. I agree with everything you said about the Brian Kelly point. And I know that when you said that the Brian Kelly era was great, I'm with you. I know a lot of people are probably watching or listening and getting frustrated by that statement, but I remember the Willingham days, the darkest days of the Weiss era, and I think that sometimes we kind of take for granted the success that Notre Dame has had in recent years. And last year was a pretty eye-opening experience because Notre Dame hasn't had a disappointing like that in quite some time. But obviously, I'm still a believer in Marcus Freeman and what this team can accomplish this season. And a big reason why is Sam Hartman. That's actually where I want to start with these over-unders because we got a few official ones out there. Some of these lines are official. Some are not because I made them up. But this first one is from our friends at FanDuel. They've got Sam Hartman's regular season passing touchdowns at 26.5. And for context, he threw for 35 last regular season at Wake Forest and 34 the year before that. So what do you think we're missing here?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to hear a lot of these numbers. And full disclosure, I was telling you, Tyler, I'm not a big, season prop better. I'm not saying it's the wrong thing to do. It's just I bet win totals. I bet conference futures. That's kind of the way I go. But for discussion, obviously, we'll talk about it. So what are we missing? Well, I think Audric Estime didn't exist at Wake Forest. I think that is certainly something we are not accounting for. Michael Mayer does not exist right now in this offense, which was a massive red zone target. So look, Drew Pine threw for 22 touchdowns last year. I think if Sam Hartman is healthy and you do the law of averages, he certainly should obtain over 26.5. And then you also have to worry if you are playing these, season player props is health, right? If Sam Hartman, God forbid, got hurt, then, you're in trouble. That's action, because he, began the season and is playing. So I think that's ultimately how it all plays out. But, when you look back to some of the bigger years of Notre Dame's quarterbacks, prolific quarterbacks, you would think 26.5 is very obtainable for Sam Hartman. And not to be kind of square, to just play an over on Sam Hartman. But I think when you look back at Drew Pine, albeit with a different offensive coordinator and without a, NFL tight end, he should go over this number. And, that's why I think that's probably why the number is there is, once again, there doesn't seem to be that clear red zone target. And Audric Estime, I think most people believe, will just be pounding it into the end zone from short yardage.
Yeah, from the Estime perspective, I get it. Once Notre Dame gets in the red zone, they're going to hand it off to him because he's a tank running through the hole. I get that. But still, the number was so low that it made me pause because I'm like, wait, this is this is like the stinky line theory that I know that you've referenced before, where it's so obvious that it makes you hesitate.
Yep.
You're like, I don't want to touch this. So I would take the over as well, although now it has me second guessing a lot of things, but we'll move on to the next one. And this one made me laugh. This one also comes from FanDuel. They've got Sam Hartman's regular season passing yards at 2,800 and a half. I love that they added the half because the odds of him hitting exactly that number are so low, but God forbid that someone push on this bet. So there will be a winner and there will be a loser. I mentioned his passing touchdowns last season. He threw for 3,700 yards in 12 games last season and over 4,000 in 2021, but granted, that's in 14 games. So a little bit lower compared to his pass, but I think we're in a similar conversation with the passing yards as touchdowns.
Yeah, and I would almost be of the ilk of to go over. I would probably prefer the passing yardage over the touchdowns, just because of the uncertainty you get in the red zone. Could Sam use his legs a little bit? On a bootleg situation. Once again, not having that big target, even though I expect Jaden Thomas to kind of be a big guy down there, and he's become more physical in the red zone. And, we'll see from, the tight ends emerging as the year goes on. But I think, there's certainly uncertainty with a handful of these options, but, that's why he's here. And that's why he's, in his sixth season of college football. So, 2,800 yards, divide that by 12, you're looking at what, like 225 per game, something like that. And I think this offense, once again, it comes down to health. If Sam Hartman stays healthy, and I saw a great stat out there, which was Sam Hartman in clean pockets, right? And this is, I think something that does need to be accounted for this year for Sam Hartman is he's never had an offensive line like he's going to play behind. Now, you can argue that he had better skill wide receivers. I actually think that's a fair argument. A.T. Perry, man, he'd love to have that guy. I'd love to have A.T. Perry at Notre Dame this year. He's playing in the NFL. But when you look at, Joe Alt on the left side, Blake Fisher on the right side, Rocco Spindler at center, if Shroud.
I think Zeke Correll is going to be center.
No, Zeke Correll.
Right, right guard.
For some reason, I keep saying that. Rocco Spindler maybe at right guard. And if Billy Shroud continues to, take the step in the right direction as this mauling guard, he's going to have a really good offensive line, should have time to pass behind. So, look, yeah, it does seem, this is a Notre Dame podcast and we're, sitting here with green tinted glasses on. But no, I just think the way this offense goes, I think the way Chris Tyree, should be utilized. And, I'll be honest, it's funny. I'm going on a little tangent here, but I kind of wish we could go and he's off doing his thing in the professional world, and I applaud him, but I almost wish we could go to Braden Lenzy and be like, come on, man, you had so many opportunities last year. You were streaking down the field. Yeah. You got a couple touchdowns in the Gator Bowl, but I think Braden Lenzy would absolutely flourish. I felt bad for the guy because he had so many opportunities.
Yeah, he was always open.
And it took him, 5 years to get there. We, as Notre Dame fans, we were like, when is Braden Lenzy going to use this speed? And we saw it on the couple end arounds. And then he finally was at the right peak of his career. It felt like he was always getting open. And, unfortunately, Drew Pine was thrust into duty, and that's how it all unfolded. But man, I think he would have flourished this year. But best of luck in his life. Obviously, he's moved on to a professional career, which makes sense, in outside of sports. But no, I think he would have been a nice piece to have here as just that X factor. But you never know. I mean, we'll see if one of these youngsters can kind of be that guy, and we will see. But no, back to the original question, 2,800 yards. Yeah, once again, assuming health, and looking at his yardage from the previous 2 years, you'd have to think over is the look, because I would think this would be more of a balanced offense, right? Sam Hartman came here to be showcased for the NFL, right. And I think it would be a disappointment to him. And honestly, like, I don't want to go too down in the weeds, but it would be a bad look for Notre Dame kind of in that portal era, in my opinion, if they're not helping Sam Hartman, which I think they will. I mean, it's a mutual situation, but they're going to let him throw the ball this year.
It's a fair point, and I think this is more of an indictment from the people who are making these lines about Notre Dame's wide receivers and what they perceive that they will be this season more so than anything related to Sam Hartman. And you made a great point about, Notre Dame's going to have a great line. They're going to have Audric Estime to run the ball. But he's going to want to showcase his skills because he understands like the NFL is still the ultimate goal for him, and winning is great, but he's got to let it rip a few times this season, and I think he will have the chance. Football season is about to kick off, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to win all season long. Because right now, when you bet on a Super Bowl winner, you can get bonus bets every time they win in the regular season. Just pick any team to win the Super Bowl, and you'll get bonus bets for every victory. You can use your bonus bets on spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Now let's get to Audric Estime. I made this line myself. For regular season rushing yards, I'll put it at 1,100, and I'll also add the half, like FanDuel did for the passing yards. But 1,100, for context, Kyren Williams' career high was 1,125, and we all know how great he was. So I think this would be a really great season if he's able to get over.
No doubt. I would have to probably lean towards the under, just because I would think Notre Dame is going to try to avoid running him and having him run into a wall. Now, look, last year, I just pulled up the stats. He had 920 yards, and there were a couple moments, he was not utilized in the Ohio State game. If I remember correctly, the UNLV game, he was essentially benched because of a fumble. So I don't expect those issues to arise again. But, and maybe I'm putting too much stock into, price and I don't know if Devin Ford's really going to be that big of a contributor. Jeremiah Love, I hope they're really creative and utilize his speed, but I would go just a hair under. And I think honestly, if he went under, that actually might be, I don't want to say it's a good thing because look, if he could go for like 1,800 yards, like great, let's ground and pound it. But I think to try to play a little 1-2 punch would be helpful for Audric Estime and for Notre Dame as the year goes on. And to try to keep him fresh enough for that Clemson game in November, when obviously we think back to that game, and that was just a thing of beauty of just pounding it down Clemson's throat, and they'll know that it's coming. So I'll go a hair under, but I think that's probably a fair line. He rushed for just under 1,000 yards last year. I guess the bowl game was included in that, and the bowl games won't be included in these bets. So if you remove the bowl game, I think Audric Estime was like a little over 800. So yeah, I'll go slightly under, just because I think it would be beneficial to Notre Dame in some senses to have a Jadarian Price or Jeremiah Love in a kind of gadgety type of way, or Devin Ford to pick up some rushing yards. Look, I don't want Audric Estime out there toting the rock 30 times against Tennessee State or Central Michigan, right?
He might take that game off.
Yeah, like let's not have a Ball State from a couple years ago where we're sweating it out late in the game. Let's take care of business against a MAC foe, which for the most part, look, the Toledo game, the Ball State game, look, I know Western Michigan and Miami of Ohio were snoozers, but I'm all for a snoozer, especially in that kind of weird spot leading into the Ohio State game.
Okay, this is the first one we disagree on. I think he will get the over, but I think it's going to be close. I think back to Kyren Williams that season in 2021. If he had a better line, I think he would have ran for a lot more. He was definitely carrying the offense at different points of the season, but the group in front of him just really didn't provide him a ton of lanes to run through. I think that this year, maybe without Logan Diggs, I think he will actually exceed that number, but it won't be that much. I think if you do take that bet, you're gonna be sweating that one out all season long.
At the Tyler book?
Exactly, at the Tyler book. All right, let's switch over to the defensive side. Sacks for Jordan Botelho. This number could be all over the place. I'm gonna put it at 7.5. He had 4.5 last season, including the bowl game. People are really high on him. I'm kind of in let's wait and see mode. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd probably take the under, just based off of, that's a big jump. I'm excited for him. We've seen the flashes, but, the consistency is the biggest thing. I hope, for the sake of Notre Dame, he's the type of guy, obviously Jean-Baptiste coming over from Ohio State, hopefully sets the edge. But, yeah, Botelho's kind of that high ceiling type of guy. But, yeah, unfortunately, I I would have to go under on Jordan Botelho there. Hope I'm wrong, but I would think, is he going to be consistent throughout the year? That's my question. Now, you could see a situation where, he has a big game against a Tennessee State or something like that, which kind of helps boost those numbers up. But, even you look at Duke's got, a veteran line coming back. So I would lean towards the under and hope that I'm wrong in that situation.
I'm with you. I think it's going to be under there as well, but it's going to be close. I do think he's going to get close to that number, but as long as he's pressuring the quarterback, if he doesn't bring him down every time, that's fine. Just as long as he's causing chaos in the backfield, I'll take it. Okay, last one for the player props. Interceptions for Benjamin Morrison. I put it at 4.5.
I'll just go under just because of regression, and I think he won't be as targeted as much. He had 6 interceptions last year. I think 5 interceptions was like top 20 in the country. So I'll go under, and he'll have maybe more PBUs. I think he'll have a big year. And as a Notre Dame fan, and especially, for me being from the DC area and seeing Cam Hart playing the way that he is and the reports coming out of camp, I mean, I can't recall a cornerback duo that has had this much buzz for the Irish in, quite some time, maybe since like the early 90s. So I'll go under just because of some regression coming. Maybe, you're not going to get targeted as much as a true fresh or as a sophomore that's coming off an All-American year. So I'll go under, but hopefully gets 3 or 4, a couple PBUs, and then Cam Hart can also step up and have some big plays as well.
I'm with you again. I think it's going to be under because teams aren't going to really be throwing to him nearly as much. Last year, as a true freshman, they didn't really know yet. Well, now they know. And it's sort of the Deion Sanders thing. He didn't always light it up with interceptions. It's because his side of the field, they weren't throwing to. So that's it for the player props. This episode of Locked On Irish is brought to you by Birddogs. I've raved about Birddog shorts before on this podcast, and I'm here to do it again because they are just that good. Not only do they make you look better, they're way more comfortable than regular shorts that are made of a stiff, restricting cotton. Birddogs is able to fix this issue by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki, but stretches so you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. Not only can you wear these shorts to the gym, but you could wear them on the golf course, out to lunch, really, wherever you want. So go to birddogs.com/LockedOnCollege or enter promo code LockedOnCollege for a free white tech hat with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnCollege or use promo code LockedOnCollege for a free white tech hat. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm wearing mine right now. Look at it. This could be yours. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnCollege and get you one of these, all right? Once your bird dogs arrive, you won't want to take them off. That's a promise. Okay, that's a wrap for part 1 of my conversation with Tim Murray. If you want to listen to our breakdowns of Notre Dame's biggest games on the schedule, you can check out part 2 right now. We went a bit longer on that one because we talked pretty extensively about each game. Then we finished up by talking about Notre Dame's projected win total of 8.5 and whether that's fair or foul. Thanks again for making this your first listen of the day. And before you check out part 2, make sure you've subscribed to the show on YouTube or wherever you're listening to the pod, and follow the show on Twitter at LockedOnIrish, on Instagram at LockedOnIrishPod, and my personal Twitter account at Tyler, WOJCIAK. Talk to you in part 2.